Good afternoon. Well, the Labour Party conference is over. The second party conference of our governing Labour Party, a party that won the general election with a massive majority, but finds itself just 14 months in very deep and in many ways deserved trouble. It's been an extraordinary conference. I've been watching party conferences for half a century. Never before have I seen one name.
One thing proves Keir Starmer is running out of time, and Nigel Farage is waiting. There's a particular sort of panic that sets in when you realise the ground beneath your feet isn't quite as solid as you thought. Right now, that panic is sweeping through the corridors of Westminster, and it has a very specific target, the Prime Minister himself. Because something rather extraordinary is happening in British politics, something that would have seemed utterly preposterous just months ago. Keir Starmer, the man who led Labour to a landslide victory with 405 seats, is fighting for his political life. And the clock is ticking rather loudly. Before we dive deeper into this political earthquake, if you're keen on staying ahead of the curve on UK politics, hit that subscribe button and join the current UK family. We're serving up the political tea whilst it's still scalding hot. Let's be brutally honest about where we are. Labour MPs are watching the polls with the sort of horror normally reserved for watching a car crash in slow motion. Below 20%. Third place. Potentially fourth if the Greens have anything to say about it. And who's sitting pretty at the top? Nigel Farage and his Reform UK, maintaining a double-digit lead that's starting to look less like a polling anomaly and more like a genuine political realignment. This isn't just embarrassing. It's existential. The whispers started quietly, as they always do in Westminster. But last week, those whispers became rather loud briefings when Sir Keir's own friends felt compelled to announce he would stand in a leadership contest if one were called. Now, you might think that sounds supportive, but here's the thing about British political culture. When your allies are publicly discussing your participation in a leadership contest that doesn't yet exist, they've essentially fired the starting gun on your potential departure. It's the political equivalent of your friends telling everyone at the party that you're definitely not leaving early, which only makes everyone wonder why they're protesting quite so much. What we're witnessing is something rather unprecedented. A Prime Minister with a massive parliamentary majority auditioning to keep his own job. Sir Keir is now in the uncomfortable position of having to convince his own MPs that he's the man to fix the country's problems and keep Labour in power. Whether he finds it dignified or not is entirely beside the point. Politics doesn't care much for dignity when survival is at stake. Make sure you smash that like button if you're finding this analysis useful, because what comes next gets even more intriguing. The truly terrifying part for Labour MPs isn't simply losing power. They've done that before. They can hunker down in opposition, regroup, and wait for the electoral pendulum to swing back. That's the normal rhythm of British politics. But losing to Reform UK? That's a different beast entirely. That's not just losing an election. That's watching the entire political landscape transform beneath your feet. Nigel Farage isn't just leading in the polls anymore. He's building credibility as a genuine alternative Prime Minister. When influential figures like Alan Mendoza, director of the Henry Jackson Society, sign on as Reform's chief advisor on global affairs, it sends a rather clear message. Serious people who want to shape Britain's future are betting on Farage, not Starmer. The left wing of the Labour Party certainly hasn't missed this particular memo. Reports suggest they're in early preparations for a leadership contest. Now, these aren't the preparations you make when you're feeling secure. These are the preparations you make when you're watching the ship take on water and wondering whether the captain knows where the lifeboats are kept. Sir Keir tried to quell the uprising on Tuesday. In Cabinet, he delivered the classic lines that every embattled leader reaches for: focus on the British people, stop the distractions, deliver change rather than talking about ourselves. It's the political equivalent of a football manager saying the team needs to focus on the next match when everyone knows he's 2 defeats away from the sack. Here's the uncomfortable truth. When a party leader has to call for unity, that leader is already in the danger zone. Unity doesn't need to be called for when it actually exists. Share this video with anyone who still thinks British politics is boring, because what's unfolding is anything but. The real test comes next week when Rachel Reeves unveils her budget. It's going to be a tax-raising budget, which is political arsenic at the best of times. Labour MPs will then scatter to their constituencies for the Christmas recess, clutching their briefing papers and trying to explain to increasingly hostile voters why their taxes are going up whilst public services remain mediocre. And hovering over all of this like Banquo's ghost are the May elections in Scotland, Wales, and local authorities across England. Labour MPs are privately gaming out scenarios, and most of those scenarios involve their party getting absolutely hammered. Here's where it gets rather delicious from a purely analytical perspective. Sir Keir and his inner circle were genuinely brilliant at winning power. The 2020 leadership contest, masterful. The 2024 general election, a demolition job on the Conservatives. But winning power and keeping power require entirely different skill sets. Right now, Labour doesn't just need a plan. It needs a revival strategy. It needs something that can rescue both Starmer's premiership and the party's electoral prospects before they disappear entirely into the abyss. The problem is time. Time is the one commodity Sir Keir doesn't have in abundance. Every day the polls stay dire is another day his ambitious rivals spend perfecting their own plans for change. Every day Reform UK maintains its lead is another day it looks more like a government in waiting and less like a protest vote. Every day that passes without a clear narrative of improvement is another day Labour MPs start doing the maths on their own re-election prospects and coming up with answers they really don't like. British politics has a way of moving slowly until suddenly it moves very fast indeed. We saw it with Thatcher. We saw it with Blair. We saw it with Cameron, May, Johnson, and Truss. Leaders who seem immovable can find themselves out of Downing Street with startling speed once the momentum shifts. Right now, that momentum is shifting against Keir Starmer, and the question isn't whether he's aware of it. He absolutely is. The question is whether he can reverse it before it becomes irreversible. Nigel Farage is waiting. He's always been rather good at waiting, hasn't he? Patient, calculating, ready to pounce when the moment arrives. And with every passing day that Labour remains mired in the doldrums, that moment draws closer. So where does this leave us? With a Prime Minister fighting for survival, a Labour Party that thought it had decades in power now wondering if it has months, and an insurgent party led by Britain's most effective political disruptor sitting comfortably in pole position. The next few months will determine whether Starmer can pull off the political resurrection of the decade or whether we're watching the prelude to the most stunning collapse in modern British political history. If you want to stay on top of every twist and turn in this unfolding drama, subscribe to Current UK right now. We'll be here, dissecting every move, every poll, every briefing and counter-briefing as this story develops. Because trust me, it's only going to get more intense from here.